Welcome to another edition of the Pearl Polto Show. I am Pearl Polto. This is the show I always say to educate you right there in your household, or if you're driving in your car. But tonight I have I'm going to say a special show. As I say, all my shows are special, but sometimes some shows are more special than others, and here's why. I call this man a man in his music. I called it on Facebook, a man in his music, and let me tell you why. He's a disc jockey of an oldie station, and this is one person that wants to please everyone, and he tries to make everyone happy. But don't get me wrong, he does bite back, and out of all the people on the radio, he got my attention. And let me tell you how he got my attention. I have in the past, naturally many people know I was a singer and songwriter, and I made this on one of my shows, and he contacted my producer, and he contacted me, and he said, "Send me your song." And I did. It was no big thing. I wasn't going to go back into the business. But what I did, I sent it to him. And then I forgot all about it. And then one day, I had to call his station. And when I called, I got him. And I said, let me introduce myself. My name is Pearl Polto, and the reason why I'm calling, I would like you to play Josie Brandon's song. And he said, "Well, Pearl, I don't have it." And I said, "Well, I'll make sure you get it." So in the meantime, he went back to the music, and I was waiting there patiently listening to the music. And then we're going back and forth, and we're talking, and he said, I have something special for you." And I said, "What's so special?" He said, "I'm going to be playing something." Well, he first played Guitar Boogie Shuffle, which is Frank Virtue. He was my producer. And we were talking, and I said, "Oh, my God, this is Guitar Boogie Shuffle," which he knew. And then all of a sudden he said, "Don't go anywhere." And he went back. He played my song on the air. Well, I was amazed, because here's a person that doesn't know me. And because he didn't know me, he went the extra mile. And he's such a kind person where people were helping people. And when you help others in life, I always say it's going to come back to you 100%. And let me tell you, which I found out tonight, and I'm going to tell the world, he has never done an interview at all. And I'm just finding this out tonight. So I am so honored to have this person on. I want to know all about him. You're going to hear all about him. You hear him on the radio. You hear him play the music of all the oldies out there and the new. He just loves music. And if you really are into music and understand what this guy is all about, he's one person and I know many disc jockeys and I know many talk show hosts. But when you meet somebody that's the heart and soul of the people out there and the singers, you sit back and you say, "I want to know this guy." I want to welcome Alan Price to this Pearl Polto show. Alan, are you out there?
Hi, Pearl. Thank you for having me on. You're my first interview that I've ever done.
I love it. We're going to start from scratch now, because, as I said to you before we went on, I want you to tell people not only when you started on the radio, how you started. You even said you were tired of the radio. And I want the people to know everything that you're all about from day one. I want them to know you.
Well, I can try to do it pretty fast if you like me to.
Slow as possible. I'm going back to Vietnam. I want you to go back to Vietnam even.
Okay, I'll tell you what. First of all, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I was raised in a family of the military. My dad was the CIA, and we traveled all over the world. And during that time period, I ended up moving into Texas and loved it there. And so I stayed in Texas, went to school there, graduated in a small little town called Pine Tree High School in Gregg County in Longview, Texas. And so I got my draft notice there in 1966, got drafted. I knew I was going to be going to Vietnam. I really didn't want to go, but, we have to do what we have to do. So I got drafted in October of 1966. I was in the Army, and went to basic training in Fort Polk, Louisiana. Ended up being a combat engineer. Went to a little place called Little Korea in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And from there I went straight to Vietnam, Cam Ranh Bay, Quy Nhon, and all the surroundings in Vietnam. So I ended up being working at a medium boat company, also transportation battalion, and I had to do things that I really didn't want to do, but just to survive in that war, which was not a very popular war. I was able to get through it. But during that time period, we did not know about the chemicals being sprayed on our troops, as everybody knows it as Agent Orange. And so I did not know I was sprayed with that. So during that time period, I came back. I got out in 1968, went back to my old job, working in Dallas, Texas, and I didn't feel very comfortable because of the people didn't care about us for being in Vietnam. And then the Air Force was looking for prior service people. And during that time period, I was very fortunate to apply for a new job they had opening in the Air Force called audiovisual. And so I went from Army to Air Force and got into a career field of audiovisual. I learned everything about broadcasting, motion pictures, the libraries, and everything. And I got to be stationed in Fort Worth, Texas at Carswell Air Force Base. And that's where I got started with my dream. While I was working in the audiovisual field, I was, of course, a record collector. I have now over 100,000 of the original 45s from the early 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80 era. And I've been collecting them for a very, very long time, and a lot of 78s, and some of these records are rare and they're worth quite a bit of money to record collectors. But then during that time period, I was in the Air Force doing my regular job. On my off time, I was playing records at the Officers Club while they were eating dinner on a Wednesday. And, of course, at that particular time, I was making an extra $25 a night, which was pretty good money back in the 70s to take home. And that thing developed into something a little different because I was kind of getting bored just playing records. So then I got my microphone, and then I started chit-chatting about the records and then taking requests. And people were coming up to me and couldn't believe I had their song and played it and dedicated it to them. And then that led me over to the officers, from the Officers Club to the NCO Club, and then down to the Airmen's Club. And then I started doing dances. They would bring in the military soldiers and the college students from around the areas, and I would be putting on sock hops and dances and the disco music. And I was actually the very first playing records, but actually what we had was just real home turntables and none of the sophisticated equipment of today, because all we had was receivers and the home speakers to play with. And so, of course, I went through a lot of those during that time period. And then after that, I started representing the Air Force. They send me out to different areas to MC some shows and this and that. And, of course, my military job took me to Colorado Springs. I did some USO. And then I ended up in Schusterberg, Holland, stayed there. And then during that time period, I was getting ready to retire. I didn't realize that I had Agent Orange.
How did you know? How did you know you had it?
Well, it came out in the news media that in that particular time in 1978, soldiers were dying from the war in Vietnam from chemicals. But the thing was, it was getting them from the inside out. But during that time period when I was in Vietnam, I kind of remembered using the gas mask because I couldn't stand the smell of the spray of the foliage. They were killing the foliage from making it from green to brown. And so to make a long story short, I think the gas mask saved me and some of the other guys' lives because I didn't get it on the inside. It came on the outside of my skin. And so I still have it today, and I'm very fortunate that I'm still alive, but I still kind of believe some of the Agent Orange caused the damage inside of my body of having cancer of the kidney. Of course, I had eye problems, and later on I lost my left eye. I'm blind in my left eye. But I retired from the military, and during that time period, I opened up a nightclub, and I had Allen's Club, and I opened up my own nightclub for 20 years. During that time period, I was also working at a radio station, and the club went real well for the 20 years. I retired it, I sold it, and got out of it. And during that time period, I stayed with the music and the radio station. And, of course, the love of the music and the love of the artists is what I really like to keep to our listeners. And during that time period, radio stations, of course, as you know, as today, they don't let a disc jockey do anything except follow a script.
Isn't that something? Programming.
And all about the money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had somebody on the show, you were lucky you could talk to them for about 5 minutes if you were lucky. And, of course, you played the music that they programmed. So 11 and a half years of it, I had my fill of it. And the guy told me, he says, well, you're through with radio and nobody's going to hire you again. And I said, well, you may be right. But then he was wrong, because I was very lucky that one of my sponsors, local, believed in me. And so we started the Internet. We built the studio in my home after my son graduated from high school and he moved out on his own. We took his room and I made it into a studio. And with the help from a few of my sponsors, we put this thing together. But you also have to remember, we started the Internet radio station, Allen's Golden Oldies, on dial-up. And if for our listeners, that's how we started. All you could do is...
What is dial-up? What is dial-up?
Well, dial-up is before DSL. You had to use a telephone number to dial to get on the Internet. And that's how they did it. And you could not multitask. You either listened to the station or you didn't listen to the station. So when I first started, Pearl, I only had 6 to 8 listeners if I was lucky. And then, of course, we were still experimenting, and I wasn't going to give up. So during that time period, I did my show. I still came on the air at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Central Time, to 5, and then I let the station run 24/7. I got a fantastic streaming company that I've been with ever since I started. But then came along DSL. Well, DSL started to make it a little bit much better. But, of course, you know, stations will go on the air, come off the air. And because if the streaming's not working, you lose your listener. And then sometimes they get so upset they don't want to come back on till the next day. So during this time period, here comes the years. The years keep going, and I'm still working it. It's a 24-hour-a-day job. I mean, it's just because I do 4 hours doesn't mean I'm not doing something else here in the studio. Now that I am retired, I devote all my time to my radio station and our animal shelter here where I live, and some of the senior citizens community things. And I do periodically shows for class reunions. And matter of fact, I've got one coming up, 50th anniversary of high school. And it's not my high school, but it's the year I graduated 50 years ago, 1963. So I'm excited about doing it. But to go back to the Internet radio station, T1 came out. T1 is designated straight for the station only. See, DSL is designated all over, so you don't really get a full stream like you really want to designate it. So I have a T1, and it's designated straight for Allen's Golden Oldies. So during this time period, I built it up to close to 80,000 people now. Unbelievable.
Yeah, unbelievable is right. But you build it up, so, you know, you're doing
yes,
something
I
right.
Did. Well, I did it by myself. And, of course, during this time period, I've been very fortunate. I have some sponsors who truly believed in me, and one of the biggest one that helped me on my feet was Dick Clark's American Bandstand Theater in Branson, Missouri. And so during that time period, we worked out a deal where I would get to go to Branson, Missouri, and I would get to meet some of the recording stars and get some liners or some interviews and things like that for sponsoring the shows, and they would get airplay for who's playing at their place, which I thought was really great. And so I got to personally meet Bobby V, Fabian, Chris Montez, Judy of the Chiffons, Brian Hyland, Joe Terry, Frank Buffet of Danny and the Juniors. Also got to meet Dave Somerville of the Diamonds. And I got to visit with these people. And, you know, they're so great. They're so nice to talk to. You know, they're not like it was back in the days when they were stars, because they couldn't visit and talk to anybody.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
They were on such a schedule. And so we became close friends. And then the change started. So I started doing interviews here on Alan's Golden Oldies. And they became a part of my family, and I became a part of their family. And the next thing they know, they're telling somebody else. So then I end up getting Bobby Rydell, Frankie Avalon, Chubby Checker, Gary Lewis of Gary Lewis and the Playboys, guys like, oh my goodness, Johnny Tillison, great guy. Then I had Dee Dee of Dick and Dee Dee, Kathy Young, who did 1,000 Stars, Glenn Campbell, how about that, and Paul Evans.
How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel?
It makes me feel good that I could bring these people on my show to regenerate their music and what they did in their lifetime to a new audience.
Well, how did it make them feel? Let me ask you
love
something.
It.
Yeah.
You know, what's so unique about them is that when they first come on my show, they're a little hesitant. But when the other artists tell the other artists, you're going to really enjoy it, they found out that 10 or 15 minutes they were going to give me turned into an hour or an hour and a half. You know, the longest interview I ever did was Jimmy Clanton. He stayed on for over 2 hours.
Wow.
There was so much to cover. And, you know, last Wednesday, I had...
You see, you know, it's not that you have so much to cover. Let me say something that you're missing something, because it takes two. You got my attention, and I know why you're getting all the artists' attention, and which I'm going to go into with Pat Boone you just interviewed, because you're the kind of person you could just go, and I stayed on the phone as you went to the music and came back and forth, if you remember, because you're that kind of person. Not that many disc jockeys are like this. And that's what got my attention. Not that many disc jockeys, and I've been in this business for a long time too, but you are an exception to the rule. You interviewed Pat Boone last week?
I beg your pardon?
You interviewed Pat Boone?
Pat Boone was last Wednesday, and you know, I was told that he was only going to be able to spend 15 to 20 minutes with me. And he really doesn't do that many interviews because, you know, he is so busy. He really is a busy, busy man. And so he came on the show. I really surprised him with an ID by Terry Moore. Well, Terry Moore was the leading lady who played in Bernadine, Pat Boone's first movie. He was so shocked. He couldn't believe that. And then I did a commercial that he did with Dinah Shore about the 1960 Chevrolet. And he got shocked about that. And then I brought him on. We started talking. And then one thing led into another, and I was just able to keep him going. And he said I knew more about him than he knew about himself. And that's why I love what I do, because I really remember these things. I relive my childhood. And a lot of this is all in my head from the days when I was young, because I love sitting in front of the TV, watch the Chevy Show with Pat Boone. I love seeing Bernadine 27 times. Loved April Love. I love the movies that they were in. And I tell them it's the truth. I do. Pat Boone had so many hits. But, you know, as we discussed our interview, but Pat Boone is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Neither is Jimmy Clanton. There's a lot of artists that are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that really they should be. And I am so blessed that Joe Terry and Frank Buffet, of Danny and the Juniors, who I had on my show today. As I mentioned earlier, that it was his birthday. He is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they should be. They're the early pioneers. Pat Boone, he was there before rock and roll. Elvis Presley opened up for him, not Pat Boone opening up for Elvis Presley. But we discussed those things, and of course, I have the music, and I have the outtakes. I keep all the little things that I do. And
well, you have mine now. I'm going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about actually 2 weeks ago, you just did an interview. As I was going off your radio, she was coming on. When we come back, and I'll tell you who that person was. We'll be right back. Stay where you are, Alan.
Thank you.
There's nothing more disruptive and annoying than getting an automated call to your cell phone. There are laws against companies using computers or recorded messages to call you on your cell phone without your permission. This is consumer protection attorney Carrie Flitter. You've heard me as a guest on the Pearl Polto Show. There are consumer laws in place that prohibit many of the unwanted calls to your cell phone. If you're receiving unwanted or unauthorized calls, whether collection, selling products or services, or otherwise, you may be entitled to have these calls stopped and to collect money damages that the law provides. If you're getting unwanted or pre-recorded calls to your cell phone, contact us, the Consumer Protection Lawyers at Flitter Lorenz, at 888-668-1225. That's 888-668-1225, or online at consumerslaw.com. That's consumers with an S, consumerslaw.com. If we accept your case, the bad guys pay our bill.
You're listening to Pearl Polto. My guest today is an extraordinary guy, Alan Price. He's the disc jockey, and he's telling you about who he actually really is. And he's one special person. And it was interesting because last week I contacted him again, and we were talking about personal things. And at the same time, we were talking like for a good half hour as he's gone back and forth to the music. And then I left to go back to my business. And that night, I received a phone call from a friend of mine from California, actress from Bandstand, which is Bunny Gibson. And she contacted me and said, guess who I was on the air with today? I said, well, I was talking to too. You must have been leaving. I must have been coming off. And she said, I don't know. We knew the same person. And she'll be watching this as well tonight, all from California. But my guest tonight has a lot to say. What do you do with all your records?
Well, my records now are all stashed away. They're all permanently boxed and put away for safekeeping. Everything now is all been converted. It took me years to do it, but they're in MP3 form. And I was able to clean them up so you don't hear the pops and the like the old days. So you don't do it with the turntable anymore.
Do you have connections with? Like, I see you doing all the oldies, but when I called up, I didn't really know that. I didn't know you that well. And at the same time, it's like Josie Brandon has a new song out, not the oldie song. So I noticed that you take new artists as well.
I do. I really do. I'll tell you what. I have a New Jersey Roustabouts is a really great group from New Jersey, and they have a couple of great records out, and there's a young lady by the name of Lori, and also another great guy out of Branson, Missouri. You may know Stingray Anthony, who's with the Winter Dance Party. He does Richie Valens. He's just fantastic. He looks like him. He's been endorsed by the Valens family, and they're going to be doing the Winter Dance Party for Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper. They do it all the time around the February the 2nd area, and he's a great performer. And, of course, having Jimmy Clanton on my show, and I've worked with Jimmy and the Dorvells. We did a show together in North Carolina, and I got to meet Bristol Stompin' Bonnie personally, and it was just a great time, and I noticed she was on your show. She is just a wonderful person. She's very good-hearted, and it was so great to have Bunny Gibson on my show from California. We promoted her 2.5 Men segment where she was dancing and singing, and I could find her there, but she was just fantastic on that, and I'm very proud of her that these people come out and still try to keep us Young.
Yeah, especially Bunny. Bunny will do that. Bunny's a great kid. But at the same time, as you're introducing, you're actually doing the oldies and the new. You're going to be a first. But I like it because, as you said, many of the disc jockeys have a program. It's so wrong. It's so wrong today. They've been doing this for ages. I think that's why you got tired of the radio. Even myself, I always like that freedom. I like the freedom to say, I want to put who I want to put on my show. And you're the same way.
Well, I don't want to cut them short. Most of the time, they're the ones that have to go, and I'm at their bid, and I'm very blessed just to have them a short time. I love when they call me. I told them anytime you're doing something, pick up the phone and call me. Dave Somerville of the Diamonds, he calls me. Kathy Young, who did 1,000 Stars. Dee Dee from Dick and Dee Dee. I mean, they're back on, and how about Donna Lauren? I mean, beautiful people. From the Shindig days and from the Batman and the Monkey series, to get to share those stories to all our listeners. I love it. And, it's just a pleasure to keep on bringing these people. Gary Lewis, talk about his dad and talk about his times when he got started at Disneyland, just working out there in California at Disneyland until he got picked to be a recording artist. I mean, his mom put the money out there and did not tell Jerry that she was funding him to get him started. That was a great story.
Well, you're an insider. When you're listening to these artists that you couldn't touch years ago, and we both know we couldn't touch them, but you're listening to their stories, you're listening to their comebacks, and they're getting a feel for you, but you're getting a feel for them too. What do you think? What do you think when you hear their stories that you couldn't hear 20 years ago, maybe when they were singing?
Well, it's a different time because those people were so rushed around. It was all about the promoters making all the money off of them as the time that they were out there. And the sad thing is there is a lot of sad stories about the ones that are no longer with us because once the fame was gone, they didn't know what to do with themselves. And a lot of them, I had some stories. I had Jimmy Rogers, who was on my show. A lot of people didn't know that Jimmy Rogers never made any money off of any of those songs he recorded on Roulette Records. All those big hits like Honeycomb, Kisses Sweeter Than Wine, all those hits he recorded for Roulette. He didn't get a dime for it. He almost lost his life. There was some kind of a hit put on him. It's so sad. And then I had Tommy James.
Now, everybody thinks that these people are millionaires.
Yeah, they really do. Really do. And it was so unreal that the story that Tommy James told about his time with Roulette Records, that the people kept them in drugs. And that was more or less their money during that time. And he wrote a great book called Me and the Mob and the Music. And I got to meet Tommy James for a short time when he was at WinStar Casino putting on a show with the associations and another group called the Grassroots, if you remember those groups from the 60s. But Tommy, he was on the show with me, and we opened him up, and he had some great things to say. It was just unbelievable. And he was surprised. Most of them are so surprised that I know more about them than they do about themselves, and I don't get into the negative about their career. Mm-hmm. If they like to talk about it, they're welcome to do so, but all I'm interested in is what they did to the music industry, and that's what made us happy as we were growing up. We loved to dance to the music, and that's what it was all about. And the biggest thing in my life was to get to meet Dick Clark. This was the biggest surprise of my life, is when a disc jockey that liked me in Dallas on an AM station, he surprised me that he gave me 15 minutes to be with Dick Clark.
Wow.
Because Dick Clark was doing the show, and he surprised me with this. So I didn't have but a little camera, one of those little cardboard box cameras, because I wasn't expected to do anything with it. And here, lo and behold, here comes Dick Clark. And he is the nicest guy you could ever want to meet. And somebody took a shot of of Dick and me, and there I do have it on Facebook. It's not the best shot of it, but that's the only one I have, and I got to meet him in 1984. But that didn't mean I didn't get to talk to Dick many times, because when I was working in radio, and then before I had him on my show, help promoting his Dick Clark grill. He had grills here.
And in King of Prussia in the Philadelphia area.
Sir, ma'am?
He was also in one of the grills was in the Philadelphia area, the King of Prussia area. That's how I got to meet him. I was MC of the Dick Clark, believe it or not, anniversary. That's when I got to meet him. But they have one in Texas, a grill?
Well, we did. They're gone now. They're gone. They're not here any longer. Of course, as Dick's health was getting bad, I heard that he just about sold everything except his DC Productions. And he still has television shows that they produce under the Dick Clark name. But, it was like I really, truly missed the guy. I admired him. I kind of liked to follow the way he was. I loved Alan Freed. And, those people, they paid their dues, and Dick made a lot of people stars, and there's some things that they say about Dick, but, you can't make everybody happy. And people are going to say some negative things about anybody.
The higher you go up, the more jealousy you have.
Yes, yeah, and I get it sometimes too, but I'm not that way. If they feel that way, that's fine. But I'm enjoying what Alan likes to do, and that's like keeping the music alive.
How about Jerry Blabbett? Have you ever met Jerry Blabbett?
No, but I've got his book, and I want to get him on my show because he was one of the originals there before Dick Clark became the host of American Bandstand.
I am working on that, and believe me, he will. He will contact you. I am working on that as well. How about Harvey Shelton? Do you know who he is?
I'm sorry?
Harvey Shelton?
No.
Okay, he's from California now, but I met him years ago. I went out to lunch with him because he was on my radio show. He was actually the head of the Bunny Hop before Dick Clark.
Oh, really?
And I interviewed him, and then we went out to lunch, and then I put him on my radio show, and then he just took off. And thanks to Bonnie, she gave me the book, and I contacted Harvey, and he's going to be on the show as well. So it's interesting. He's in California, too, but he was the original. A lot of people forgot about him, too. He was the original of the dance of the Bunny Hop.
That is fantastic. I enjoy interviewing people. I've had Brenda Lee. I was very fortunate to have Ray Peterson before he died. Tell Laura I love you. And then I've also had Paul of Paul and Paula, Ray Hillebrand.
Wow.
And Johnny Rivers. What a great guy. Bobby Goldsboro. What a great guy. Tony DiBatello of the Letterman. Speaking about the Letterman, Tony played a little choir boy in the motion picture White Christmas. A lot of people didn't know that. He also played in the choir at the end of the movie, if you'll see real closely, of War of the Worlds, the original.
Well, how did you do this homework when they were a guest on your show? How did you do your homework?
I study a lot of this stuff, and growing up was what I really, you would laugh at me at first. I couldn't afford to buy the records, so as a kid, there was a young lady who worked in Woolworths. Do you remember the Woolworths stores?
Yes, I do.
Okay. It's kind of like a 5 and 10 cent store back then. Well, I would go over to where they had the records. And, a record was 98 cents. That was a lot of money. I couldn't buy them back then. But the lady who worked there, she would let me play the songs. So I learned the words to them, all the words to the songs. And that's what got me to saying, my goodness, I love this, I love this. And so as I was growing up, I remember exactly where I was when these songs were being played. And that's why when I do my show, I can tell you exactly where I was at that particular time when I play a song. Can you remember where you were? That's what I asked them. And that's what makes it so exciting, because these songs were a part of my life. And that's what's so unique.
They were not only part of your life, though, but now who are you going to? I mean, in years to come, are you teaching other disc jockeys what you're doing, or you just don't care because they're not doing the same thing you're doing? You said one time you were tired of the radio. What did you mean by that?
Well, when I meant tired of radio, radio was going in the wrong direction. And I truly believe you're going to see more Internet radio, and it won't be much longer that Internet radio will be in cars. They will be one of the features that you're going to get. Of course, you have XM, and you got the satellite radio stations, and you got some great guys up there. I love Cool Bobby B, and there's also you also have shows sometimes with Lou Christie, who I've had on my show before. What a great guy he is, and he's doing some shows. Cousin Brucey does a great show, and you know they broadcast live out of the Cleveland Theater, so of where Alan Freed broadcast, and they're still doing great things. But you know that's not real radio; that's internet.
It's internet. What other contacts? What other contacts do you have with the disc jockeys in other states? They all know you by now?
Well, I think they do. But one of my best friends, I have two.
One from Boston?
I have that JJ, better known as Jimmy J. What a great guy he is. He keeps the music alive. He gets to do a lot more things than I do, but, you know, he helps me out to get some of these interviews, people on my show, because, you know, a lot of them don't want to do the interviews, and because they don't feel that people know about them. But JJ tells them, and so I become a part of his family. He becomes a part of mine. I help promote his cruise ships and his record Rewind, and he's a great guy. And another great guy is Corky from Corky's Time Machine.
Corky Warren, yeah, of course.
Corky
he's a member of the broadcast, pioneer.
Yes, he is. Corky has a show every Sunday night
TV.
right here
TV.
on Alan's Golden Oldies that begins at 9 p.m. Central Time, called Corky's Time Machine. For 2 hours, him and Mrs. Corky have a blast, just like Joe Terry an hour before him with Rock and Roll Is Here to Stay, the radio show. So they're a part of the family. And, you know, as long as we can be a part of the family and not let it go to your head what you're doing, then I don't mind sharing. It's when you get people that all they do is want to do it for their glory.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that, because I'm not doing this for Alan. I'm doing it for the music. I'm doing it for the love of those people. And those people, I want them to be recognized while they're live, not when they're gone. And, you know, we're losing them left and right. We've lost so many. You know, I was so blessed to get to meet Andy Williams 2 years prior to his death. What a wonderful man Andy Williams was. And then I got to meet the Osmonds, Jimmy. What a great guy, you know, Jay, the Osmond brothers.
Did you know Sally Starr from the Philadelphia area?
I beg your pardon?
Did you know a Sally Starr from the Philadelphia area?
I heard about her. She was a pioneer had her own show.
She just died.
Yes, she was 95.
Yes, and she was
wonderful to live that long. Isn't that great?
I met her at one of the Pioneers luncheon, and I sat across from her, and I sit there like miraged in my face because I just looked at her and I said, when I was 2 years old, I used to watch you, and now I'm sitting here having lunch with you. So I know
that's what's so surprising when you get to meet those people. You know, you sit there and you see Fabian on television while you're a little kid, and here I am standing right next to him at American Bandstand, selling his CDs along with Bobby V. I was helping them out because they didn't have anybody to sell their product, and I sold out of their product. They couldn't believe how I could sell their product that fast.
My question to you is, why don't, and if you ever thought about it, why don't you just become a talk show host? Because you're interviewing these people. I mean, that's what I do. I'm a talk show host, and I love interviewing.
Well, that's what I want you to do. That's your job. My job is to keep the music alive.
Okay.
And if the interviewers want to come on my show, you know, if the song singers, you know, I'm very lucky. I've also had Lloyd Price. You know, it took years to get Lloyd Price, Mr. Personality, on my show. Frankie Ford, who did Sea Cruise. You know, I can still give you those names of those people. That's the kind of interviewers I like to interview to talk about their career. But your job is a lot different than what I do. Mine is because I remember these people, and I want to play their music. And people want to hear their music, but they also want to hear the stories about it, and that's why I combine it all into the entertainment of making it not boring on my show. I give them something that they're never going to suspect. They never know what kind of song or what I'm going to do next on Alan's Golden Oldies.
I'm a vouch to that one. I'm a vouch to that one because you never know what you're going to expect from you. And I was amazed myself, though. But all the people you interviewed, which people did not you interview yet that you want on your show?
Oh, my gosh. I haven't put my pen to the pencil yet because the one I really wanted was Pat Boone. And that was the one that took forever. It took me almost 5 years. Bobby Rydell, fantastic guy. He's so blessed to be with us, and, a liver and a kidney transplant, and now he's back out there entertaining. And, Bobby and I have one thing in common, and when we have him on my show, his birthday is the same as mine. We're born April 26th. We're both Tauruses, and we get along so great.
He's from South Philly naturally, but he's in Vegas right now. I think he's in Vegas because Bunny Gibson met with them and took pictures of him.
I know Bunny got to be with Fabian and Frankie all together.
Yeah.
She's such a lucky person. See, I don't get to go to all these shows. I don't have that time, but I do get to go to Branson every year, and while I'm there, of course, I do get to mingle with the recording artists, that are prepared there. There's Joe Stafford. He's there at his theater, and got to meet some of those people there on the Strip. And I try to help promote their business so people would come and check these shows out. How long are you going to be able to see Jack Jones? Jack Jones was there. Ray Stevens, the man with the many funny voice talent. What a great guy he is. I mean, I could go on and on and on about a lot of these recording artists. They're just fantastic people to talk with.
Again, you didn't answer the question, though. Who do you want to in the future to interview?
Oh, gosh. You put the pressure on me. I don't know.
Well, because maybe I can help out, too, in a little bit.
Well, I've been wanting to get Corky's going to try to get me Dee Dee Sharp.
Dee Dee Sharp now. Wait a minute. I could get her. Maybe. You know why? I'm a regular on the Trudy Haynes show.
Okay.
And as of, a month ago, Trudy interviewed Dee Dee Sharp and then me. So on the same show. And I'm still on. Trudy's coming back at the end of February to interview again. So I will ask her. She's good friends with Dee Dee Sharp.
Well, I also would really, here's one of the hardest persons that you could ever want to get. And I'm still working on it. And one of these days she may come along. I'm looking for Connie Francis.
Oh, I've met Connie Francis. Connie Francis is down to earth, Connie Francis is, and matter of fact, when you meet or when you talk to Jerry Blabbett will actually put you in contact with Connie Francis as well.
Well, you see, I've called Connie before, and I get her secretary, but she's said that she was in the middle of writing a book. And when she finishes that book, that she might be interested to be on my show. Because
she doesn't know about you. She doesn't know about you. That's why.
No, she doesn't know me until, Jimmy J knows Connie. He's been at her house, and of course, I'm sure he's told her about me. But until she gets to know me personally, they have to feel relaxed with me. It was kind of like I had Jackie DeShannon on my show. She was a little shy at first, and then all of a sudden she realized what kind of person I was. Boom, boom, boom. Jackie will come on my show anytime I need to, and she's fantastic. Dodie Stevens. Remember Dodie Stevens?
Yes, I do.
Tan shoes, pink shoelaces.
Amazing.
Yeah, and let me tell you about Johnny. She's on the alternate doo-wop shows. She does those. And she had a couple of big hits. She played in Hound Dog Man with Fabian. Great lady.
Oh, I used to idolize Fabian and Frankie Avalon and Bobby Rydell, and to think that, I used to idolize them.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I also had Bill Medley of the Righteous Brothers. Of course, we lost Bobby Hatfield. I never got to interview him, but I've had Bill Medley, and I got to meet him in Branson. April Stevens, Nino Temple, April Stevens, who did
Oh,
Deep
wow.
Purple.
Wow.
She was a sweet lady to have. Connie Stevens was great to have on my show.
16 Reasons Why I Love You.
That is correct. And I had all three of the original Comets. I had Joey, I had Marshall, and I had that drummer who's way up there in his age, Richard. Great performers. They're still performing today.
What did you think of, you know my producer, which was Frank Virtue of the Guitar Boogie Shuffle. Did you ever know him personally or you heard about him? Yeah.
No, I just love that song because that was one of my favorites to pantomime with my guitar.
Okay.
I used to pantomime that when I used to do pantomization in my show.
When you said about these singers, like, and as I said, he was my producer, and it was so sad because when they're dead and gone, no one knows them.
That's the thing. A lot of people, they forget who they were. You know, I go out and say, hey, I'm going to interview Jimmy Clanton. Oh, who's Jimmy Clanton? I says, Just a Dream. Oh, that Jimmy Clanton. See, when you give them the name of the song
Yeah.
or they hear the song,
Yeah.
they remember who they are. It's just like the Dorvells, you know, Bristol Stomp. They remember the Bristol Stomp. They remember You Can't Sit Down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those songs. And, you know, it's so unique to see those guys. I love Mark, and I love Jerry. And, of course, what makes the show go fantastic is when Bristol Stomp and Bonnie gets out there, and she gets everybody out there doing the Bristol Stomp. You can't beat it.
Yeah, well, she's
And,
into
you
the
know,
music too.
I've had Bonnie on my show. She was on my sock hop show. I do a sock hop show usually on Tuesdays, and she was invited. We talked about her days on Bandstand, and we played some of the songs that they danced to, and then we did the drive-in movie trailers where we talked about going to the drive-in, and then I have these movie trailers that we play, and we cut up and did a lot of great things with that. But she's a hoot, and she's down to earth, and she's just a wonderful person, and she just loves to keep the music alive, and she's a great part of their show, and I admire her for that, and she enjoys what she does, just like you enjoy what you're doing, and I definitely love what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do.
This is
so
what it's
they
all
have to pick me
about.
up.
This is what it's all about. We love to do what we're doing, and we can't stop. We can't
No.
stop because we love it so much. But my question to you is, why aren't you writing a book?
Oh, I don't want to write a book, but I got to tell you something.
A man that is music?
My wife did write a book. She did. She gave me a book. I got to tell you, it's in its draft form, and I've got it sitting right here because it was given to me. You want to get a big laugh? I was doing a wedding reception. I was paid to do a wedding reception dance, and it was a setup, and I was the sucker. I did not know it was for me. It was my 65th birthday. And I had no idea. Usually you can't fool me. I'm the one that knows what's going on. Well, no, my wife really pulled a good one on me. So she did. And during that time, she gave me a book in draft form of my whole life up to that particular time. She did so much research on me. She had the goods on me.
You mean she actually wrote an autobiography about you and gave it to you?
Well, she went out and met these people that knew me and got information from them. Matter of fact, it's sitting right, well, I've got it right here. I keep it with me. I haven't looked at it since my...
Well, Alan, why can't you, I mean, just food for thought, though. Why can't you, I mean, the title of the book is A Man and His Music.
Well, she says, no matter what anybody tells you, baby, rock and roll is here to stay. And this book is in memory of my mother and my sister. And here I've got it right here in my hand. It's so unreal. I look at it, and there's so many great pictures of when I was a little baby and a little boy, and the jobs I used to do, the letters that I used to get from the military for doing a great job of representing them, for doing shows far beyond what they asked me to do. And, you know, that's what it's all about. You try to make it better for everybody else, and you get rewarded at the end. And I get very emotional about it because, you know, I'm a caring person. I care. And I know you can't cure everybody, and you know, you try to, but there's people out there that won't like you, and because they don't like the way you believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you do your radio show, I do not do politics with radio. I will not do anything about politics, but on the outside, when I'm personal, if I have some issues, I have a right. I can vote. That's what our voting rights are for, and I separate those two things. So if somebody doesn't like me from my belief there, then they don't like me because of my radio show.
Well,
And it
you
has
know,
nothing
yeah,
to do with me.
I always say that you can't make everybody happy, you know, and as I said, you know, you just have to sit back. You can't make the whole world happy, and some will love you, some will hate you, some will dislike you for different reasons, but they're their own issues. I always say they're other people's issues. They're not yours, because you're too much of a caring person of trying to make things happen, including myself, and we are making it happen. So we can't have those little percents hold us back because they're a little bit jealous or envious of what you're doing, and maybe they wanted to do it as well, you know?
That's true. You know, I know all these DJs. You know, it's so sad that here in the last year, over 400 DJs on big major radio stations, AM, FM, who are making really big money, went from all those figures down to zero. And nobody has any job openings for them, and so they're trying their best to start on the Internet. But let me tell you something. It doesn't happen overnight on the Internet. It took me over 7 years to be where I'm at. And it has to be full-time. And if anybody wants to do what I'm doing, that's what you have to do. You can't have it handed to you. You've got to work. And if you believe in what you're doing, it's going to happen. And I'm very blessed that Facebook came along and helped me out. And then I also have to thank the local newspapers in the Dallas and the Fort Worth area and some other magazines for finding me and getting the word out to the people, because AM, FM radio stations in our area that play the early 50s and 60s are just about gone.
When you said Facebook, it's interesting. I don't go on Facebook that often, but I always try to watch to see who's the people that are out there, who's, you know, what they're doing, what not. And then, as I said, a couple of people impressed me. Bonnie was one, the bandstand Bonnie, and you were another one. And it's interesting how that attracts. I when I go on it, for some reason I look beyond it and see the real people. And you were one of them. You were one of the real people that I spotted out with on Facebook. So I think, yeah, I mean, in one way it's a hazard. Next way it's a blessing with Facebook. And I try to go on it, not on it, because to me it's catty at times. And
Well, it is. But you know, if you'll notice on my Facebook, I have two Facebooks. I have one called Alan Price, and then I have a subsidiary, if you check into the other part, it's Alan's Golden Oldies. But if you'll notice, I do not do anything it's inappropriate. I will not put politics up there. People will ask you questions. I will not answer those. If it's nothing on a positive era, I'm not going to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's me.
But if you use Facebook for what it's truly meant to be, you know, it works.
It's a marketing. It's a marketing. You know,
it
it's
really
a marketing.
works very well. And I want to thank all my Facebook fans, and I want to thank all the rock and roll Hall of Famers and the people who are in the motion picture business and the record industry business for being a part of Alan's Golden Oldies. And we all became connected, and we're giving them another shot at a later in their ages, so people that are younger are going to remember, wow, this music. Because if you listen to the music of today, you know, it's not like what we had. And, you know, as we got older, the music got younger sound again.
Yeah.
It reminisces.
I was impressed. I tell you, one of my Facebook she's just confirmed it, and I think you remember her. It was Patty Duke. Remember Patty Duke?
I do. I did a thing on Patty Duke, and I couldn't get Patty Duke on my show. I sent her an email, but, you know, of course, she doesn't know me. But I will tell you this: I'm working on Peterson, the guy who did my dad, Paul Peterson.
Paul Peterson. Well, Paul Peterson's one of my Facebook buddies too now.
Yes, he is mine too, and
Okay.
he sent me a little note telling me that he would love to get on my show. So we're going to try to work it out to get him, and I'm trying to find some of them lost and forgotten recording artists that just had maybe one or two hits, and love to get them. And there's some on our Facebook that I've been trying to get, but they don't want to do interviews.
There's one that says, "Hey there, lonely girl." Remember that, Eddie Holman?
Yes, Eddie Holden. Hey there,
Eddie Holman only had one song out there, only one song, and that was it.
Right.
And then there was.
Well, there's also the casinos. I'm going to get one of the members of the casinos. You remember? Then you can tell me goodbye.
Yeah, yeah.
Kiss me each morning for 1,000,000 years.
I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back on Facebook and go back to my Facebook buddies of the singers and songwriters, and let me see what I can do. I'm going to just say, call him, or direct them to the show so they can watch the show, and then they could see who you want. Maybe they'll contact you with it. I can't thank you enough, Alan. This
no,
hour.
I want to thank you. I got to thank you. But let me tell you, you keep on doing what you're doing, Pearl. You're doing a great job. I've listened to some of your interviews on your website, and also I'm going to continue doing this. And you do the interviews, and I'm going to play the music and interview the artists for that short period of time, because you do a great job for what you do. And keep up the good work. And I want to thank you and your producer, and God bless you all for having me on the show. I'm really shocked. I may have talked too much.
No, you didn't. No, I loved it because this was your first interview. So when I heard this, I mean, it really rang a bell with me. And I will be contacting you after the show. Thank you, Ellen.
Again.
Thank you.
Well, before you go, I got to tell you, I just got something here. It says, this come from Bonnie. She says, I want to thank you so very much for mentioning my name tonight. That was very kind of you to do so, and so greatly appreciated. You are a good friend. I'm still listening to the interview. It's just great and very interesting. Take care, and God bless. Love, Bonnie. How about that?
You're going to be getting a lot of that tonight, I am sure. I want to thank you, Alan.
Okay, by the way, can I say one more thing?
You sure can.
If they're interested in all these great oldies, go to www.goldenoldies.com. And, of course, I'm live Monday through Friday from 1 till 5 p.m., and I promise you, I will play your request. If you call my number at 1-817-246-3464, I play your song next. And
but wait a minute, then I have a request. I want to hear Pearl Sion's song of the right time.
Oh, you're really picking on me. And by the way, if you get any more of your songs that you have from the past, send them to me, okay?
Yeah, my voice changed an awful lot. Believe me.
Well, you know what? I could not believe that was you when
I
played it.
I know.
And how young was that when you recorded it?
I was only a teenager.
Wow.
I was only a teenager.
Well, thanks again. It looks like time ran out here, and I want to thank you, and I'll tell you what I may do. I get some songs from you. I'll just put you on here and interview you.
Okay, that's a deal. I will be contacting you. That's a deal. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Alan's Golden Oldies, by the way.
Thank you. I want to let the people know about next week. Next week we have a really important show that's coming on. If you have a reverse mortgage, we have a person coming on that's going to educate you on the reversed mortgages. She's also going to educate you. Now is the time to sell your house or to buy your house. You don't want to miss this show because our economy is going so down the drain. We also have the following week, you don't want to miss, the following week we have Carl Romano. Now, who is Carl Romano? Carl Romano is from Florida, but he was part manager, part helped out. You know the old guy, Anthony Robbins, you hear his books all over the place. Well, he worked with Anthony Robbins. So you're going to get an upfront source of what this person was all about and what Carl is all about. He's a good friend of mine, and he should be out there as well. I'm trying to put the people out there that should be. The following week, I'm on. I'm on. You're going to hear about what's going on with the credit world. And then we have a surprise guest at the end of February. A surprise guest. And we're going to build up to that one because this is going to be all over email, Facebook. You don't want to miss February's show. We have some great shows coming up, and the best is yet to come. This is Pearl Polto, as always, making the most of your credit, giving credit where credit's due. Tonight, Alan Price, you earned it, you deserve it. Let the people continue listening to your music. See you next week.
Interest rates are going up, trying to get ahead.